Welcome back, everybody, to your daily update on the state of the Malazan Empire, or something like it. Toll the Hounds, Book 2, The Final Ramblings. I am done. I just finished the book, and between video conferences and stuff, I figured we'll have us a little talk about it. So, let's do this. Cheers. All right. So, book 2 ends, and it ends with quite a few, brutal revelations and stuff. Especially around places like Bastion. But let's, step back a moment and look at the broader picture. So, yeah, Salind has been taken by those terrorists at the grave. The whole clip situation has moved on. There's a lot going on this time around in Black Coral mostly, whereas the Darujistan part is still, well, it's also brutal. So once again, we come to the sort of the middle point of the novel, and we have had our first big blows basically. Those being both the events at the Cruel's bar, with another one of our original characters from the first novel, although he was not exactly super prominent in Gardens of the Moon, but another one of those bridge burners down, and other stuff going on thereabouts. Yeah, let's look at these things in detail. So, once again, the topic of how we treat children is important. Is not only important, but has a main focus there with that narration by Krupp at some point when he's talking about child labor and how child labor is destroying childhood and destroying futures. And I think it's more than fair to say that this is not just Krupp's position here, but a general thing where we as the reader are directly addressed, obviously. So that whole concept once again is there, and it's important. And I hate to keep on going about that, but the whole concept of how specific aspects of economy work and work badly, at least for the whole, is something that keeps on going through these books for a while now. We have it this time around also with the conversation that Krupp has with Baruch the alchemist about the price of bread being raised again, which leads to people having even less money to spend. They remain in poverty, but the threat of losing their jobs keeps them quiet and keeps them in there. Yeah, that's not exactly something very specific to Darujistan. This is something that we as people in the real world know. It's like that, that it is, if you're in a part of society, in a, I don't want to say class here, but if you have a not well-paying job, chances of you ever getting out of that are minimal. Because that's not how that usually works. You spend all your money just to survive. You can't actually invest in education or anything like that. So your chances of ever leaving that specific stratum of society is minuscule, because that's how these systems are, built up to reinforce an illusion of stability, or at least to discourage social mobility, which would bring change to systems, and systems don't want to be changed, at least not by the people who are at the top of them. Also, there's that sense that often these systems are more fragile than they appear, and that things can be taken down and destroyed and rebuilt from the start, basically. And this is something that we have here a lot in these chapters. We once again have that discussion with Traveler, who obviously we know is the first sword Decimultor and his discussion with Karsa Orlong, and Karsa Orlong's goal to destroy all civilization, to start all over again, or maybe not even start all over again, but end it there. And this harkens then is then echoed once again by Calor's thoughts at the end of book two, when he is thinking about destroying all of society, of civilization as well, because then the gods can't take things from him again with his like curse. So yeah, the question of whether it is a good idea to take down a system that leaves a lot of it, like the largest part of its people in poverty, or in circumstances and straits that are not exactly perfect. Whether that's a good idea or not is something that I will not answer here. I'm just saying that reading through these two chapters, there's a lot of that undercurrent, revolutionary undercurrent here, which I personally obviously really appreciate. Well, that's obviously not all, right? There is more going on. We see more of the, how to say, we see more of the discrimination, or like gatekeeping against Barathol and his attempts to actually build up a forge, with the guild actually using scare tactics and violence to discourage him from that. So far, he's gotten the better of them, but then we have the big massacre at Karul's bar, which I suppose we need to talk about in the future. I don't know, the massacre bit, not so much. I guess at some point, we need to talk more about Humble Measure and all of that, but not today. So yeah, there's that. What else was important here? The whole episode with, not episode, but the part about Torvald, Scorch, and Lev, and these new, or these renegade Segula, Madran, Badran, and the other one whose name I already forgot again, because I'm like that. Oh God, I'm bad at this. Anyway, yes, that is, and we still don't know exactly what's going on here, and I feel like if I had thought about it, like the three right now, the three side characters from the Malazan Book of the Fallen I would like to know more about would probably be Stadlock, Madran, and that third renegade Segula, to figure out what actually went on in One Eye Cat there, and all about that. That would be interesting, but I guess my interest will shift again in the future. So I hope. So yeah, there's that. Now we have to talk us a bit more about the whole religion part, because that's, I feel, is like the largest bit of this thing, because the mess, like the fight there in Garul's bar is just it's just your average like assassination attempt. It's dumb, it's pointless, and it's brutal. But what's way more important is once again the idea of how religion world works, how all of that works with the dying god and the Redeemer and that whole thing. And I said it before, it's like the idea of having an amorphous cult, or not yet cult, but this kind of thing, amorphous potential of faith, of belief, but no fixed rules, no dogma, no nothing. That is very, very vulnerable. And we also know that obviously the Redeemer's cult, by its definition, is even more vulnerable, because there can't be any like rules actually, because the Redeemer has to take everyone, so he can't actually demand people behave in a specific way. So yeah, that kind of cult leaves itself open to hijacking by other people because that's just how you do that. And in this case, it is the dying god, who is not a god. We actually figure out who it is at this point because it's apparently another part of Bellardan's Skull Crusher, who then tried to make himself a new body, a puppet body like Hairlocks, and we see how that all worked out or didn't work out in a way. We'll see where that's going. It once again, I feel, is one of these discussions of what does prayer do? What does, like, how is the relation between gods and their worshippers? How do prayers work? There's like that one bit where I think it's Sir Domin talking about it. The fact, or is it actually one of the Andy? I'm getting confused here. But the question is like, is praying to a god, is that like making a bargain? Is it like you get something in return for your loyalty, your faith, and so forth? And obviously, this touches on what I would say the difference between modern religion and religion in antiquity, where yes, in, for example, Greek, also Roman, but mostly Greek religion, you made a deal with your god, and sacrifice and prayer and all of that was connected to the efficacy of worshiping that specific god. It's like you pray to your god and he doesn't help you. After a while, that god won't have any believers anymore, any worshippers anymore. That's how that worked at the time. It obviously went like both directions. That was like some kind of contract. So the god expected prayer for intercession, but on the other hand, for worship and sacrifice, you also expect intercession from your god. You make a deal with him or with them, and that obviously has switched since then to what we nowadays, when we talk about prayer, is we pray, we beg, not beg, but we pray, we. And when you look at modern theology, it's a lot of that is like to have a conversation with God and so forth. But there is no longer any responsibility on the deity's part, at least in the Christian tradition. I assume it's similar in the Muslim tradition. But at least in the Christian tradition, there's no longer the expectation that our prayers are heard. Well, possibly heard, but there's no expectation or a responsibility of God, of the deity, to actually intercede and actually do something on our behalf just because we prayed. That contractual relationship between faithful and deity has been broken. That's no longer there. It took like some theological maneuvering to actually get that done, but at this point this has happened. And what we see here within the within the Malazan worlds, like, and this I feel is an interesting aspect. We have like elder gods, obviously. We had the, Karul, Nightchill, and all of those people. And then we have our like gods, the generation that came afterwards. Your Fenner, your all of these like regular gods. Hood is not an elder god. You have that generation, but I feel both the fallen one, the crippled god that is, and the redeemer. Not so much the dying god. I don't feel it fits in there, but at least the redeemer and the crippled god are another like newer generation of god, or belief or faith, because they once again go in a different direction. The crippled god focuses on accepting the broken. And we all know that almost everyone is broken in a in some way, at least. So that once again is a faith that is open to almost everybody, right? It's a universal faith. I don't want to say it's a monotheistic faith, because that doesn't really work. That idea doesn't really work within the Malazan world, but because everyone knows those people are those deities are there, but The idea is that, for example, Fenrir being a god of war, or after him, I don't know, what's his name, Treach, or the wolf gods, they're gods of war. And if you're a very, a good old pacifist, you're probably not going to be of interest to those people, to those gods. Same with Maori, the goddess of Feeth, or before, obviously, Apsalar, the goddess of Feeth, like, or those are aspected gods, and their aspects are rather specific. But the Redeemer, and on the other hand, the crippled god, are both gods for everybody. Like, by definition, the Redeemer embraces every person that comes to him. There is that idea of the Redeemer being an omnipresent God, and like almost a monotheistic God, in at least a monolithic church or monolithic faith, in that you no matter what person you are, that is the God for you. And it's similar with the crippled God, if you accept that we all, as human beings, by virtue of living, will collect scars and thus cracks and breaks, and thus be part of his, I don't know, I don't want to say flock here, but you know what I mean. And I can't, help thinking that sort of the Redeemer and the crippled God are basically different facets of the same idea, or both halves of what would make that monotheistic faith, or that perfect, like, God, or the kind of God that would be able to have that kind of religion built around him. Because the crippled God, at least so far, he makes specific demands. He's like there is still some kind of judgment, or at least some kind of expectation from the crippled God's side. He's not as open as the Redeemer. I feel that those two kind of are different sides of the same coin there, being the idea that everyone is looking for some higher being, some God, to accept them no matter what. So yeah, there's that going on. I don't know how much it will help, but well, what else is there? Maybe a bit more to talk about. Well, Harlow's gone down there to that Talana Mass and given him those tiger bones that he will now use for his legs, apparently. And we will need to talk more about Harlow in book 3, I guess, because, yeah, there's not that much new stuff happening with him right now. What else? Yes, I feel more about the Seer Domain Redeemer and Selen situation. So Selen was supposed to, open a path for the dying god to usurp the power of the Redeemer. Apparently, it didn't work out because of certain Tist Andy in the way. But my point there was that the end there with Seer Domain sitting there in the barrow, or a spirit sitting there in the barrow together with Itkovian's spirit, and Itkovian saying he hasn't had anyone to talk to in a while, forever. That is was it like very heartwarming in a way, or also like painful situation? Because, yeah, by definition, and this is, I guess, the idea there. The problem there is that Itkovian never thought of himself, wasn't planning to become a god, right? There was no action or agency on his part. The Redeemer is a passive god. He just takes in. And the question is, how long can you do that? So for him to have have Seer Domain there as someone to whom he can actually talk. So there's also like a minimum of agency there, right? He couldn't even. I mean, he needed Cyrodiil to defend himself because apparently he can't do that anymore because he's just this very like how to say yeah, he's very limited in his like potential, which is because apparently power is obviously formed by worshippers or by believers and by faith. And since his believers, like his followers, only see him as the one who embraces and nothing more, there is no like more dimension to him so far. It's a very one-dimensional god so far. So yeah, there's that. Um, what else? Apparently, things are moving forward. Spinok Durav has been sent on some kind of mission. Anomander Rake's gonna do something. We'll see what that will be. And yeah, shit's gonna hit the fan in Daruzhistan relatively soon, I suspect. But yeah, I mean, mostly this time around, like in those two chapters, there's a lot of action going on, the combat in those combat scenes, all of that. So there's not that much new things for me to talk about today. I'll be back on Monday with Toll the Hounds Book 3 and hopefully more like organized thoughts. I have other stuff to talk about tomorrow and on Sunday. We'll see what that will be. Probably something Malazan related, and then maybe I'll be done with reading Lavi Tidar's By Force Alone on Sunday, and I'll give you all my thoughts on that because holy shit, it is good so far. In a very disrespectful, deconstructing Arthurian legend kind of way, which, you know, we all want that, don't we? Anyway, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you, well, tomorrow and on Monday about Malazan. Until then, cheers.